Class, I want to spend a little bit of time on two things for you that I think will be helpful. First, I want to talk about the grading rubric and how I provide feedback in the system for you to see. The feedback I provide is very important, and I would encourage you to not only look at the rubric, but as you'll see shortly, I want you to look at your submission papers and see where I provide the feedback there so that you have an idea of how I am moving through the grading process for you. So first and foremost, it's very important that when you do your assignment that you meet the rubric requirements. You'll notice that on the rubric and how I have, in my view, the ability to score in the rubrics that you will have to meet requirements for, demonstrating conceptual understanding, evaluation of issues and problems, use of evidence, research, professionalism, scholarly writing, and APA format. So typically when I read through your paper, I am looking to see that you meet the rubric requirements, and I'll score you in the point section appropriately. If I deduct points, I always provide for you some form of feedback here, whether it's a direction for the next time or to point out something that maybe you didn't include. I will put it in the comment section. I'll do that for each part of the rubric. And then I always add commentary. These are general assignment comments. The feedback in this portion of the rubric typically isn't very specific, but I will point to your writing here in this area. I will talk probably most likely about what you've included in your paper, how you've included it, so that you have a general sense of my thinking on the overall assignment. The other piece that's very important here, and this example is from a previous course. This is not from resource and fiscal management, but a previous course. So I also want to make sure that you understand, again, in my view, that I will use the rubric to rate you. You'll notice here in this particular example, for this student, I talk about the APA format here. And typically I will have commentary about format, and format's very important. And I want to make sure that you are meeting the APA 7th edition requirements for formatting. So I put the commentary in the rubric, but I also want you to make sure that you look in the paper itself, because I highlight areas where I want to provide feedback. In this instance, it's about APA format and the use of authors and how this is formatted in terms of the direct quote here. So I provide some feedback here to review APA for 3 or more authors. Again, very important that you look at the rubric, that you look at what I've provided in the paper, and then of course I want to make sure that you see the assignment comments. And so I will put comments on each assignment in the assignment comments box. You will get some feedback in the rubric and on the paper itself. Again, very important that you read through these pieces because the pieces that I'll place in the paper, typically in the first 2 weeks, will provide you with feedback necessary to make corrections as you move forward for future submissions. Given that we're in 5-week courses, the grading process really is condensed. And it's important that you read through that. I'll do my best to provide you the most descriptive feedback that I can on your papers. So that's the rubric and the grade book and how that looks from my view and how I intend to provide you with feedback in those areas. Now I want to talk a little bit about the importance of APA format and my expectations for all of your submissions. This is critically important, and so I hope that you look closely and carefully at this example that I'm going to provide, because this will lay out for you the format for all of your paper submissions. So let's talk through this real quick. One thing that I found is over the last several 5-week courses is that many students are struggling with what exactly goes into APA 7th edition formatting. So I'm going to point out some things here that I hope will be helpful for you. First and foremost, I want you to take notice that at the top, if you are used to having a running head or header in these papers, we are not using headers or running heads. So you should not have a header or a running head in any submission for this course. So look carefully at this example as you are writing your papers. I also want to point out that it's important that you have a page number on every page in your assignments in APA 7th edition formatting. This first page is the title page. You have to have a title page for every paper that you submit. So I'm going to walk through this because this is my expectation for your submissions. First and foremost, you should have the title of your paper. It should be in bold. Now, some folks use a subtitle. Subtitles really aren't necessary for the course or for the purpose of the assignments that you will submit. However, you can have a subtitle if you believe that it's needed. If so, you'll notice that it is also in bold, and I will also point out that because I've added in red some direction there, these items are centered, bold and centered. So your format should look like this. You'll skip a couple of spaces, and then these are the required elements that I want to see on your title page. You should have your name. You should have American College of Education. Please use the course number EL5723, my name, the instructor name, and the assignment due date. I would like to see all of those elements on the title page. And again, I pointed this out a little earlier. All elements above should be included and they should be centered. This template actually was modified from the original APA template. You could find that in the ACE Student Commons Writing Center. Let's scroll down a little bit and look at some of the other elements of the paper. I want to point out that this is critically important, that you should have an introduction to your paper. And your introduction should have a heading. And that should be exactly the same as the title that you have on the title page. So the title of your paper on the title page should be the heading in bold for your introductory paragraph. And of course, if there's a subtitle, the subtitle also goes in this area. I want to point out the headings for you. Again, this is very important. What I would share with you is typically in the papers that you will submit, you will have a level 1 heading, and level 1 headings are bold and centered. It's possible that you will have a level 2 heading in some of the paper submissions, that you may have a level 2 heading. I just want to point out that those level 2 headings are left aligned and they're bold in title case, and they should look like that. And then there are the other levels of headings, levels 3, 4, and 5. I won't go too in depth here, but you can see what those look like and why you use those. Again, not necessary, probably won't be necessary for your paper submissions, but level 3, 4, and 5 are available for your use based on how you're setting up your paper. The other piece of the paper submission is the conclusion. I want to make sure I point this out. You must have a conclusion section with the conclusion as the heading for that section. So let me just recap real quick for you. You must have an introduction paragraph. The introduction heading should be the same as the title on the title page, and you must have a conclusion to the paper. You'll notice in the assignment directions that you will set up the other headings based on what those assignments are asking you to complete. Let's talk a little bit about references. So the references page is separate from all other pages. So all reference pages should have their own page. You'll notice this one happens to be on page 4. So references are on their own separate page. Make sure that you have your reference page on a separate page. Its references is the heading with an ending of S, should be bold and centered. And I put in examples of references here, and I want to talk briefly about those. And you'll notice at the bottom, you must have 3 to 5 scholarly references. That's a requirement for each assignment, 3 to 5. Um, so in this example, we have Braun, then we go to Chamberlain and Robbins as the references for this paper. These references are in 7th edition formatting. I want to point out to you that this is critically important as well, that the way you set up your references should look like this. All lines after the first line should be indented 1/2 inch from the left margin. This is called a hanging indentation. So again, I just want you to notice these areas as you set up yours. All authors' names should be inverted. Last name should be provided first. Typically, we just go with the first initial as well. So the first and middle names should be written as initials. So again, typically you use the first initial. If there is a middle name, that's also an initial. I want to scroll up and just point out a couple of things, because sometimes the setup in your paper itself, it could be confusing on how you do this for an in-text citation. So in this paragraph, we have the in-text citations based on the references below. So I want you to notice this one, Braun et al. 2013. Anytime you have 3 or more authors, you should use the et al. To incorporate those authors who you're not naming specifically. Very important for you to do this in your in-text citations. I also want to point out that you may also reference in your citations your authors in this way. Because this one is not a direct quote, you're paraphrasing, you will set it up like this: Chamberlain 2017. The third reference, Robbins and Judge. I want to point out here, this is a small nuance, but when you have your authors in parentheses, you're going to use an ampersand. If you were going to use the signal statement, Robbins and Judge 2018 stated that, then you would use the word and because it's outside of the parentheses. These are just a few examples of the setup for in-text citations. I'll point out too that direct quotes require a page number when you use a direct quote in the body of your writing for an in-text citation. There will be APA 7th edition format resources in the announcements for you to use, and I would encourage you to use those. Again, as you have questions about formatting or expectations, you will please use the Canvas inbox to email me any of your comments, your questions, your concerns about anything for this course. Best of luck as you set up your formatting for your assignments.